I had thought 2 years ago about having you come here and film this. I would never have offered or volunteered, but I've been lucky enough to learn so much from different people in this industry. Elke Horn came and mentored me for a little bit, and she came to my workroom, and she was lovely and kind, and she mentioned some craft items that I had down there and asked me if I still did crafts, and I said, no, I don't have time. She said, then it doesn't belong in the workroom. And then she pointed at some pillows in the box. She said, why are these here? And I said, well, I wasn't able to sell them. And she said, so they're a reminder of a failure every day. I said, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. So it took me a very long time, almost a year, but I cleaned out my workroom. And I got rid of everything that I was not using or hadn't used in a while. And my husband and I renovated the basement earlier this year. We put a drop ceiling in, we put new lights in, and it's a whole different experience to work down there. My family used to call my workroom the dungeon, and my younger daughter dubbed it the Cave of Wonders. So some of this is still in transition. I used to have samples hanging on the wall as you come down the steps, and I took them down. I liked how clean and empty it was. This is my receiving area. My receiving manager, wait, that's me. Everything that comes in, whether it's fabric, supplies, trims, I put it here because it will make me clean it up right away because I have to get past it. So I'll check in fabric, I'll put the date on it, and I'll put it here on this shelf. And then I know I have to check the fabric itself in within a couple of days before I start to work on a project. I prefer to work on projects from start to finish. The way my mind works, I don't necessarily work well if I cut out all the lining I need for this week or cut out finish length of draperies one day and work on a valance the next day. I really prefer to work start to finish. I feel like it's more productive for me personally, and since I work by myself, I don't have to adapt to anyone else's needs. So the first thing I like to do is work at my work table, which I just love. And since we're talking about people in the industry and how helpful and wonderful they are, this grid was actually given to me by Kelly Chitty. She won it at the New Jersey chapter's Windows to Success one year and didn't need it, and she gave it to me. And that was such a generous gift, and I've been using it for years, and I love it. I will put fabric on here and check it in here. If it's a really large bolt, I'll roll my lining cart all the way over. So when I renovated down here, I had this piece of pegboard that had been on the wall, and I loved that I could hang things on it, but I really didn't want to hang a lot on my walls since they were so nice and clean. So it happened to be exactly the right size. I didn't even have to cut it. And I can store all of these things on the side of my lining cart that I use regularly. I love keeping my Do-Fix tapes here because I can leave them right there, and I can roll them out onto my table, and I don't get any tangling. So this part of the workroom is obviously the work table. If I have to cut any wood, I happen to live less than a mile from a Home Depot, so I get a lot of my boards cut there. It's easier and faster, and I'll buy wood for multiple projects at one time. But if I need to cut wood, I'll do it here. It used to be my husband's work table. It's really not so much anymore. This area and this area is for either completed projects that I'm waiting to deliver or projects that I'm working on. I made some deliveries this morning. This is a really odd piece. It had already been cut and was in the window, so I just had the installer take it down and I adapted to it so I know it's going to fit perfectly back in that window. So I'll store things over here out of the way, and this is my sewing area. So I have 4 machines. This is the first machine I ever had after I stopped using my Bernina home machine for my business. This was also given to me by someone who's not in the industry. Someone had given it to her, she wasn't using it, and she literally gave it to me for free. I've replaced the motor, and that's about it. So I'm still using the same machine that I've been using for 10 years, and I don't even know how old it is. I keep rolling tables at the end of these 2 machines with the supplies that I need most often for those machines, or I keep most of my threads here, keep some threads there, I keep zippers there. I keep them on rolling carts, and I keep them in plastic. Everything in this basement is either in plastic or raised up just slightly. I have not had water in this basement for years. I'm not taking any chances. The order in which I've acquired these machines is my straight stitch was my first machine. The second machine I bought was the blind hem machine, which I absolutely love. I still will do some hand sewn hems depending on the fabric. That has just made my life so much easier. And then at the end of last year, I purchased my walking foot and my industrial serger. Up until that time, I had been using a home serger for anything I needed it for, and I beat that poor thing to death. So I'm thrilled to have this. I bought these at the end of last year, and that sort of inspired the renovation down here because I didn't have room for all my machines, and I need to make it work better than it was working. When I purchased these machines, the woman that I purchased them from kept them on appliance rollers. And I thought it was a brilliant idea because it allows me to slide these back and forth easily. And when I need more space, I have it. I can keep them pretty much at the same distance from each other so that I can scooch my chair in and out. But if I have something really large that I'm working on, I can just slide this over, I have more space behind me, and slide it back when I'm not. When I purchased my walking foot and the industrial serger, the workroom that I purchased them from also had these countertops available. So I purchased these from her as well. And this has also been fantastic because I can take a long panel and place it here. I don't have it draped over my knee or over my shoulder while I'm trying to work. And I can slide things along here and go to the next machine, and it just makes things run a little more smoothly, and I have less wrinkled fabric. So when I added these tables to my workroom, I added some additional storage space, and while I did need to get rid of a lot, there are things I need to keep. I try to label everything as carefully as possible, especially since I go through every once in a while and move things around and then I don't remember where I put them. So by putting labels on everything, I don't have to stop and think. I can find things much faster. I also am not afraid to have any empty spaces because I could fill them up pretty quickly. This is my desk area. I keep inspirational books, very important manuals with instructions. I keep workshop information from WCA seminars and meetings, from any webinar or workshop that I've been to. If it includes instructions, I've been keeping hard copies of things. My Pricing Without Emotion class information, books just for inspiration, anything like that I keep here. All my office supplies I keep here. I have a printer here. My computer's not here right now. I have an office upstairs, which is the room that I actually started my business in. That's a nice place for me to go to get away from all of this. Sometimes if I'm in the middle of a project and I'm a little overwhelmed or I don't know quite what to do next and I need to work on an estimate or something like that, I'll sit in the upstairs office where I have a pretty view and pretty colors and it's a nice quiet space. But everything I have is basically right here within arm's reach so that I'm not wasting time looking for things. This is how I keep my workflow organized. I do mostly work for interior designers. I have some retail work, but the majority of my work is for designers. So I keep a different colored card for each designer. I put the name, the side mark, and I put what it is I'm making, whether or not I've sent the estimate, gotten the deposit, whether or not the fabric's been received, whether or not I've checked it in. And then as the work progresses, I can just mark it off. So I know at a glance what's coming up next and what I have to get accomplished this week. I keep the information for each client in a folder and I keep it on the desk. So no matter what I'm doing, when I'm done with it, I put it back in that spot so that I don't find it in other places. When I have a client that I just do 1 or 2 window treatments, I keep everything in a folder. If it's a really great job and we move into other rooms of the house, I move the folders into a binder and I keep each room separate I keep my estimates in there. I also keep timesheets because I time how long it takes me to do things. I keep a checklist of what needs to be ordered and when it comes in. And everything stays within its section of the folder so that if the designer calls me about the master bedroom, I can go right to that section. If she calls me about the foyer, I can go right to that section. Sometimes I'm working on one room at a time. We just stay with one client and work on one room after the other. Sometimes we're working on more than one room. So this is a way for me to keep organized and not lose track of things. Like a lot of other workrooms, I store a good bit of fabric under my table, whether it's a just completed job or I'm working on it. But one of the things that I do is I keep my rulers under here so that if I'm on the other side of the table, I can still reach it. I know there are people who like to put shelves or keep their rulers underneath here, but inevitably I'll be on that side of the table and want the ruler. So by just sliding this back and forth, I can do that, and I keep my Hirsch. I learned this trick, I think, from Susan Woodcock, where if I have to mark something all the way across the table, I just put it in there, and I can use my ruler and reach across the table to mark something. So I've probably done that about 1,000 times. I know that there's an ongoing debate about work belt versus no work belt. I happen to love mine, and I don't know what I would do without it. I keep it on all day while I'm working. When I take it off, it usually ends up being a disaster. I keep sharp scissors, usually 2 pairs. I keep scissors for cutting cords here. I keep rulers. I keep my gloves for hand sewing, my thimble, my marking pens, and any tools that I normally need right here. I don't keep my tape measure there because I usually have it on my little standing desk there or right on the table, or I have my grid to work with. But it's on me all day. When I renovated the workroom, I was lucky enough to have my friend Sue Gillen's husband do some electrical work for me. And this is what we did instead of a whole lot of outlets. I've got a 3-prong extension cord that I can pull out if I need it to stay out. I just do that. If I need it up here, just slide it back up. And that way I have electricity anywhere I need it in my workroom when I need it, instead of the cords running across the workroom floor like they used to. When we renovated the basement and we painted the walls and the floor, my husband really wanted to put a drop ceiling in, and I was not a fan because I had boards all along there where I hung my valances waiting to be delivered. My do-fix was hanging right from the rafters, and I felt like I had more hanging space, but it was so dark and it was so dingy down here that as soon as we started to put the drop ceiling in, I had to admit he was right. It's so much brighter. We added one additional light than what had been down here before, and it just makes a world of difference to be able to come down here and have it such a bright spot. So I'm really happy that I did it. I started my business 10 years ago, and when I started, I knew nothing about the WCAA or CHF or any of the industry partners that I now use on a daily basis. I took classes with Beth Hodges, Hand Cure, Terry Boozer, and I felt like I found my people. It was like, oh my gosh, I can learn so much. And I was so stunned and grateful for how everyone was willing to share what they knew, and they taught me how to do what they did. And I joined the local chapter of WCAA, and everyone there, I've made some very dear friends who live nearby. They have workrooms like I do. I couldn't exist without them. If I couldn't call Sue or Annette or Kathleen and say, do you have 2 yards of this? I don't know how I would be able to do my business. They've taught me things. They've held my hand when I didn't know what to do, and being part of WCA has really been a big help for me because I've met so many wonderful people and I've learned so much. And because of that, I stayed with WCAA and tried to be active with the group because that's when I get the most out of it.